So the lesson on velocity, the learning target for this lesson is I know how velocity is measured and I can make calculations of velocity. We're going to split this up into two different videos. So this is going to be the video going over how velocity is measured and kind of the concept of velocity and what it is. You've probably heard the word before, and so we're just going to make sure that we're all on the same page with this. So velocity comes from, really it comes from speed, which is something that we're all familiar for. And speed is the amount of distance that something travels in a unit of time. So the equation for speed is really distance divided by time, but that just gives us a number. What speed really is if I have, let's say I started at X and I started walking this certain distance, and that was maybe, it took me 1 second to get there. And then I traveled here and this took me 2 seconds to get there. And then I measured the distance that I traveled here, and maybe this was 2 meters, right? So I traveled 2 meters in 1 second. My speed was 2 meters per second. And in this second here, from 1 to 2 seconds, maybe I traveled another 2 meters. And so again, I traveled 2 meters in 1 second. Right? That's how we would say it, and we'd calculate it out that way. We'd have our speed equals 2 meters divided by 1 second, which equals a speed of 2 meters per second. And really, it's how we say it, and it's how it sounds when we calculate it. And so the units of speed is a combination of both our meters, our distance, and our seconds. So we have the units of speed, because the SI unit of distance is meters, so that's our unit for there, and then our SI unit of time is seconds. So our units for speed are in meters per second. Now, because speed is a distance divided by time, we can have a lot of different types of units here. Distance divided by time, I swear that says distance. We can have miles per hour, which we measure in the United States. We could have kilometers per hour, which should be more of a metric system unit. We could even have centimeters per minute. That'd be a distance divided by a time. We could have millimeters per hour, which would be very, very, very slow. But we could do that. We could have all of these different units. But the main one that we're going to use, the SI unit for speed, is going to be meters per second, a distance divided by a time. How far is that thing moving in a certain time? And there's a couple of different types of speed that we can look at here. And so we're going to focus mostly on this constant speed first, the ones that you can hear. So constant speed means same amount of distance each second. Okay, so let's say my example I used in the start, this guy moved maybe 2 meters, and he did it in 1 second. And then he went again, and he again moved 2 meters in another second. And then he did it again, 2 meters in another second. And so this guy is moving at the same speed, or he's moving the same amount of distance every second. He's moving at the exact same speed each time. He's 2 meters per second, 2 meters per second, 2 meters per second. And so he is traveling at a constant speed. We're using that to describe the way that he is traveling. As long as it's moving the same distance each second, he's moving at a constant speed. This is very hard to actually do, because even in my Jeep, when I put the cruise control on, I'm not traveling at exactly the same speed all of the time. I fluctuate just a little bit, but I'm traveling at a generally constant speed. So I guess it depends on how closely you're measuring that speed to know if you're moving at an exactly constant speed. But as long as you could say that you're moving at the same distance each second, you are traveling at a constant speed. Now, if we took the same situation, and now we looked at the average speed, so let's bring that in here. Now, the average speed is really when I take the total distance divided by the total time that it takes. So if we have this guy traveled 6 meters and he did it in 1, 2, 3 seconds, so the total time was 3 seconds. So his average speed was 2 meters per second. Now we could change this guy. Now this is an easy one because he's traveling at a constant speed. So the average is going to be the same as his speed every second because it didn't change at all. But if we took this and we made it, let's say he moved at different speed. So he goes, let's say he goes a long ways in the first one. He goes, let's say this is 3 meters in the first second. Then he slows down and he only goes 1 meter in the second. Now, then he goes 2 for the last one. Let's not change that. Not 2. Let's say he goes 1 again. Staying pretty slow. 1 meter in that last second. So in this first one, he's traveling at 3 meters per 1 second. So his velocity is 3 meters per second. This one, he's going at 1 meter per second. And in the last one, he's going at 1 meter per second. And so those are his speeds for each of those individual seconds. But if we took his average speed, he travels 3, 4, 5 meters in 1, 2, 3 seconds. And so his speed would be 5 divided by 3, which is 1.67 meters per second, roughly. And that'd be his average speed. So average is the total speed, or the total distance divided by the total time, and that gives us his average speed. So we've been talking about speed this whole time, but the lesson's called velocity. So what's the difference between speed and velocity? Well, speed, like we said, is distance divided by time. And velocity is really just speed with a direction, is how we're going to talk about it. So the difference between speed and velocity is that velocity has a direction. So let's say the speed was 2 meters per second like we were using the last one. The difference between that and velocity would be that velocity we would just add a direction of maybe forward, or we would have backward. Or another way that we could do this, and a way that we'll do it a lot of times, is that forward means positive. And if we were going to say that something's moving backwards, it would have a velocity of negative 2 meters per second. That would show the direction on that. So the goal of this lesson was to understand how velocity is measured and the different types of velocity. And the next video is going to be talking more about how we make calculations with velocity.